What's up, everyone? Welcome back to another edition of the Jacob and Jacob podcast. I'm your host, Jacob Hare. As always, joined by my co-host, Jacob Robam. And today, we're joined by the man who occupies your 1 to 8 on Sundays during football season, the man of the hour, Scott Hanson. Thanks for being with us today, Scott.
Jacob, good to be with you fellas here. Good to be with you. How do I differentiate between you two? What do you got? One of you guys has a nickname or something or what?
I mean, he goes by Earl.
Yeah, you call me by my last name.
All right.
I'll go
But I
by
like
Hare.
the hook of the show. I like the hook, the Jacob and Jacob podcast. Okay. Who's been watching NFL RedZone longer between you
That's
two?
me. That's me. It's got to be me.
I don't know.
So Earl, tell me that you converted Jacob to becoming an NFL RedZone fan. If you were watching before he was.
Yeah, definitely.
My man.
All right, but Scott, congratulations. You just celebrated one of your 200 episodes of Red Zone. And in all those 200 episodes, what has been the coolest Red Zone moment that you can tell us?
Woo! There have been so many. There was one triple box, and you need to look up the year. It was probably, I remember it was Robert Griffin III's rookie year. And we went to a triple box. I'm looking at you guys on my screen in a triple box right now. I see the world in boxes, guys. I'll be over at my stove in the kitchen, and I'll be like, oh, it's a quad box. 1, 2, 3, 4 burners, Anyway. So we went to a triple box, and in the triple box, and I was calling it live, we had Robert Griffin III. They were trying to ice the game. They had the lead. The then Redskins had the ball and the lead, and they just needed a first down to ice the game. And it was in FedEx Field, right? Washington's home stadium. And instead of getting the first down, Robert Griffin III broke away on a 75-yard touchdown run, maybe been 76. But the crowd was losing its mind. Because remember, not only were they going to win the game, and not only did they didn't get just a first down, they got a touchdown to win the game, but they had been dying for what they thought was a franchise quarterback forever. And when Robert Griffin III in his rookie year, right, he hasn't become a star in the NFL, but in his rookie year, he was looking special. And it was like all of that came together in that moment, and the stands were just shaking. So I'm calling that play live, like, he breaks away for a touchdown. As that was going on, in the upper right-hand corner of the double box, another rookie quarterback, lesser-known guy by the name of Russell Wilson, was throwing a pass in Seattle in front of the 12s, right, his home stadium that just rocks the earth when they get going in Seattle, throwing a 50-yard touchdown bomb in the last minute of the game to Sidney Rice, I believe was the guy who caught it, for a game-winning touchdown against Tom Brady and the New England Patriots.
Oh, my God.
Then in the upper left-hand corner of the box, and this is all happening in about 12 seconds of real time. In the upper left-hand corner of the triple box, the Arizona Cardinals were lining up for a game-winning field goal with 2 seconds left to go. Jay Feely, the Cardinals kicker at the time, kicks it. It's like going to be really close. It's going, and it hits the upright and bounces back out onto the field. No good. Game was tied. We're going to overtime. And all three of those moments happened in the span of 12, 15 seconds. And that was like, whoa, guys, this is unbelievable. Yeah.
I hope you checked your Twitter mentions during that time, because 6 franchises all had season-changing plays in under 12 seconds.
100%. And that's what we live for on NFL RedZone. It's of course we promise you red zone action. Of course we promise you every touchdown from every game. But with the evolution and the development of what I call the witching hour, we're promising you every moment that makes a win a loss or a loss a win. And what sports fan, what football fan doesn't want to see that in real time?
So
I know it certainly makes my Sunday every week.
Love it.
So let's rewind to 2009. How did you get the job that so many football fans call the greatest job in the world?
Yeah, so I heard I was already working at NFL Media. I was a roaming reporter for NFL Network, going to games, going to practices, and doing reports like you see our great people doing it these days at NFL Network. So I was already in the company. But I had heard in the summer of 2009 that they were starting up this concept, and that it was a rumor, but we were going to do a channel that was going to show every touchdown from every game, all that. And I was like, I want that job. Because when I was a roving reporter, I'd be in the press box watching whatever game I was covering live, but I'd have my laptop open and I'd be the guy in the press box that was elbowing the reporter to my left and to my right saying, well, yeah, we're watching the Patriots right now, but Brett Favre just threw for 350 yards and 4 touchdowns in Green Bay. Adrian Peterson has 100 yards rushing at halftime. Des Bryant has caught 2 touchdowns in the first quarter for the Dallas Cowboys. I was always watching the other games on my computer and always wanted to know everything that was going on, not just one game. So I felt like I was built for hosting NFL RedZone. So not to make the answer too long, but I called up the talent coordinator at NFL Network and I said, his name's Jamie. And I said, Jamie, is it true that we're starting NFL RedZone? He's like, yep. I go, who do you got to host it? He's like, well, we're looking at some different people. I said, is my name on the list? And he said, yeah, your name's on the list. And they did an audition, and the audition was at NFL Network, but it was in the summer. There were no games going on. So they wanted to see, well, who could do this job, because it's a difficult job, right? Ad-libbing for 7 hours, not calling one game, calling 8, 9, 10 games simultaneously. So they took a random week from the season before, and they took all the video from 8 games from whatever, week 6 of the year before. They queued all of the games up to the kickoff. They hit play simultaneously on all the 8 different games and said, talk. And I went in there, I was sweating. I was like trying to remember all the players' names and bouncing around and stuff, trying to be enthusiastic about it. And I had no idea. We did this for hours. It went on for about 5 hours. I had no idea if I crushed it or if I got crushed by the audition. But about a week or 2 later, I get a phone call, and it's the executive producer at NFL Network. And he says, hey, Scott. And I'm like, hey, Eric, what's going on? He's like, well, I just want to let you know, we want to offer you the hosting role of NFL RedZone. And I'm like, yes. So I said, Eric, I said, you watched the 5-hour audition. And he goes, Scott, I watched the first 15 minutes of it, and I knew you were my guy. And I remember saying, oh, Eric, that's great. Thanks a lot. And in my mind, I'm thinking, why in the did you have me do 5 hours, ruin a suit from sweating through it, and thinking I destroyed my career? I had no idea. But all's well that ends well, and that's how I got the hosting role at NFL RedZone.
So I got to ask, how do you go 7 hours on a Sunday straight through?
Yeah, well, look, I think you guys can already tell I'm naturally enthusiastic, right? I think you should give your heart and soul to whatever. There's a Bible verse that says, whatever your hands find to do, work at it with all your heart. And I try and be enthusiastic about any aspect of my life. Being here on the Jacob and Jacob podcast, I'm trying to be enthusiastic right now. And thankfully it comes naturally for me. So I don't have to work on being fired up about football for 7 hours. Because if I was a janitor in a high school, on my Sunday day off, I'd be sitting in front of the TV watching 7 hours of football, and I'd be excited about it, right?
Yeah.
So that part of it is good. If you're asking about the biological part of it, how do I, go 7 hours without taking answering when nature calls? That takes a little more discipline. I dehydrate myself on Sunday morning. I cut off all my liquids about 3 hours before the show. I eat the same dense protein, salty breakfast every single Sunday morning, and then go to the bathroom twice in the last hour before we kick off. And then it's the willpower of a ninja for 7 straight hours. Have you ever used the bathroom during NFL RedZone? I did. I had one bathroom break about 5 years ago. I took a bathroom break, and I tweeted about it, and people lost their minds. They couldn't believe it. They couldn't believe it. They thought like, oh, Cal Ripken's streak has come to an end, like that type of thing. I mean, it was so crazy. People were so infatuated by it. Pardon the interruption, PTI with Kornheiser and Wilbon on ESPN. They started their show with it the next day. They start their show. They're like, pardon the interruption, but I'm Mike Wilbon. Tony, your boy Scott Hanson from NFL RedZone. He took his first bathroom break yesterday. I'm Tony Kornheiser. Amateur, you got to keep a lemonade jug underneath the desk, and he holds up a lemonade jug. And it was like, that was the way they started their show. So everybody is interested in it. Everybody's fascinated by it. But yeah, that was the one time I took a bathroom break.
So I got to ask, we're sitting here now, a little over 200 episodes later of NFL RedZone. Did you ever envision it becoming what it is today?
Believe it or not, I did. And here's why. When we had the concept of the show, and here's what we're going to try and do for the audience, I thought it through, and I have a good imagination. And I said, if there was a channel like that when I was growing up, that's all I'd watch. Yeah. And I said, if we, the TV crew at NFL RedZone, if we do a good job at showing the action, the audience is going to eat it up. And it might sound like, I have hindsight is 20/20. If you go back to the first episode that we ever did, if we go back to the first episode, the first time I came on camera, I said, welcome to NFL RedZone. I'm Scott Hanson. Welcome to the first moments of the channel that we hope will change the way you watch football forever. And it may have seemed like hyperbole at the time, but there's not a week that goes by that I don't hear from fans saying, you guys changed the way I watch football. I don't watch one game anymore. I watch all the games. And that's very gratifying.
Yeah, in a non-COVID year, me and Earl's Fantasy League, every Sunday we get together, we watch RedZone. I'm sure you're a big fantasy player. Is there a little bias towards your players on a Sunday?
Well, that's a good question, because I do not have a favorite NFL team.
Really?
I grew up in the Detroit area, and the Lions were my team growing up. But working for the NFL, and I haven't lived in Detroit in decades, like they're one of 32 teams. If they win the Super Bowl some year, hey, God bless. I'll go crazy because my high school buddies still live and die with the Lions. But I don't have a favorite NFL team. My favorite NFL team is my fantasy football team, the Iron Bladders.
I love the name.
And you bet I root hard for him. I had Christian McCaffrey 2 years ago, and I may have added a little extra onto the Christian McCaffrey touchdown when I called it on NFL RedZone. But I try and keep it under wraps and reasonable. But yeah, I love it when my boys go off, just like you do and yours do.
If I'm in your position, I'm doing the same exact thing. Yeah, when I had McCaffrey 2 years ago, I saw a little bias from you for him, so I thank you for that.
Got to have it. Hey, he scored what he ended up with that year. It was 16, 18 touchdowns, whatever it was. So, yeah.
And I loved every moment of it.
And I gotta also add, NFL RedZone certainly enhances the excitement of following your fantasy football team on Sunday. Without it, it would be exciting, but NFL RedZone just adds that extra excitement to it for sure.
100%. Because, like you guys said, in a non-COVID year, you guys are all together, right? You're sitting in someone's basement or someone's living room, and some of you are playing against each other in fantasy. Yep. Well, when Hanson cuts to whatever, the Vikings game, and I'm about to say Dalvin Cook off the left side, one of the two of you is panicking, one of the two of you is rejoicing, right?
Yep.
So it's great. It's great fun to think that everything that I show, someone is exalting about and someone is no. So that's fun.
Yeah, I got to say, one moment this season, we do a 2-quarterback league, so I had Patrick Mahomes and Lamar Jackson. A few trades made that happen. Woo. So I'm in a matchup, and I'm down a little bit, but I'm in it still. They both score touchdowns, and I'm like, let's go. I take the lead. I'm up now. And then next thing I know, it flips to Dalvin Cook who I'm playing against, 70-yard touchdown. And I'm like,
hey, look at, as fantasy football players, we've all had bad beats. We've all been on the roller coaster ride. And when you're playing fantasy and you play it hardcore, every hour is the witching hour.
for sure.
Speaking of the witching hour, how did you come up with that term and all the other terms that you use on NFL Red Zone?
Yeah. So, 7 hours of commercial-free football. I came up with that on my own. I just figured there had to be, this show is so big. There has to be something that kicks it off, that the audience knows, all right, when the host says this, like a Michael Buffer, let's get ready to rumble, right? It's like, it's a big deal when you hear that. So I came up with 7 hours of commercial-free football, which is basically just describing the show, but I try and add that little extra oomph into it. Double box, quad box, octo box. Those were terms that I learned as a young student of broadcasting. I had watched some directors and producers talk about when there were two things in a screen in the control room, right? Back in television, back when I was a kid growing up, no one ever had a double box. There wasn't but in the control room, they would show, okay, camera 1 is on this person, camera 2 is on this person, and they'd say, well, I got it in the double box right now, and we'll go from 1 to 2 like that. So I heard those terms growing up, and I was like, well, let's not overcomplicate it. If we're showing 2 games on the screen, let's call it a double box. 3 triple box, octo box, that was there. The witching hour is a little different. I was always looking for something to how to dub that hour when the end of the early window is upon us, and the 8 games, 9 games in the early window is going to the end of the third quarter or into the fourth quarter. That hour is the most magical hour in sports television, because you just know something's going to happen. Something is just going to flip-flop or go crazy, and you're going to see it live. So I used to say, buckle up, here comes the best hour in sports television, and then some people on social media started hitting me up saying, hey, we call it the witching hour. Some of the guys from Barstool Sports hit me up and said, we call it the witching hour. I have heard that there's a legendary old radio host, sports radio host in New York, Mike Francesa. You youngsters might not know the name, but I heard he used to call it the witching hour back in the day. So the origin of it is just, different people claim that they were the first to ever say it, but it felt right. It felt like, the witching hour, because that's when weird stuff happens, when wins become losses and losses become wins. So yeah, that's how that's really the main few things that we say on NFL Red Zone and how they came about.
So I got to ask, some Sundays you have a more even split between 1 o'clock and 4 o'clock game totals, or there'll be more 1 o'clock games and less 4 o'clock games. Do you have a preference of that split?
Yeah. One of my favorite splits is usually we're dealing with about 12 games, depending on the bye weeks and whatnot. We usually have about 12 games total on Red Zone. And a lot of times it'll be an 8-4 split. Okay. I like a 7-5. 7-5 is fun because 7 games is enough, to get constant, steady action in the early window. And then 5 feels like a beefy late window. So 8-4 is good. 7-5 is good. We run up against a lot of 9-3s. And then the occasional 10-2 is death in the late window, but I don't make the NFL schedule. I just roll with it, This year, for the first time, if you guys are really observant, you may have known, with COVID canceling so many sporting events, remember they played the Masters golf tournament in the fall. It's always in the spring, but they played it in the fall because of COVID. And that's on CBS. CBS had no early window games that NFL Sunday. They pushed them all to the late window. So we had, I think the split that day was like 6-7. We had more in the late window than we had in the early window. It was the first time in NFL history that we had that. And that was a fun day, but it's rare, and hopefully we never get it again, because hopefully COVID is in the rearview mirror after this season.
So throughout the day, you're providing us with little nuggets on each game, stats and everything. How do you prepare for all of the games, and what does your preparation during the week look like?
Yeah. So the big thing about NFL RedZone, besides the bladder integrity on Sundays, the big thing is preparing to host a 7-hour ad-libbed show. There is no script, right?
Mhm.
Can't tell what's going to happen. So what I do is I try and study everything, every trend, every stat, every fact, not everyone, but all the big ones, because I don't know which game is going to be the great game that we got to focus on, but I guarantee you we're going to have 2, 3, or 4 of them that we will. You guys are school aged. So back when I was in college, occasionally I would have a professor give an exam, a final exam, and it would be an essay exam. And the professor would say something like this. We go into class on Monday, and the professor would say, okay, the final exam is on Friday. It's an essay exam. Here's a list of 10 essay questions. 3 of them will be on the final. The 10 represents everything that you learned this semester. But for timing's sake, on Friday, I can only have 3 essay questions, and that'll take up the whole hour. Well, which 3 do you study? If you're a diligent student, you study all 10. And the professor wants you to study all 10 so that you know what you learned in the entire semester. But when you get there for the exam, you only got to answer 3 of them. That's a little bit like NFL RedZone. I study every game. I study every quarterback. I study every trend and mind-blowing statistics and whatnot. Depending on what happens on Sunday, I might only use half of the things that I study or 10% of the things I study. But the ones that present themselves on Sunday, I'm going to be prepared for. So that's a lot of research. It's like practicing for an NFL game. Those guys play for 3 hours, right? And they play offense or defense. They're only on the field half of the time. And then with commercial breaks and stuff, they're only on the field less than 10 minutes of actual football action. And yet they grind for hours and hours and hours of practice, film study, weightlifting, everything during the week. That's a little bit what I do to get out there and have a fun time on Sunday.
So let's talk about this game coming up in a little under 2 weeks, not this Sunday, a week from Sunday. It's Patrick Mahomes and Tom Brady. Who do you think is going to be taking home the Lombardi Trophy this season?
Yeah, that's a tough one. Look, I know enough about NFL football to tell you honestly, no one knows nothing. Nobody knows who's going to win. If you could inject Andy Reid and Bruce Arians with truth serum and say, who's going to win this game on Sunday, they truthfully could not tell you. I guarantee that. Now, everyone can say, oh, yeah, I'm going to say 24-20 Kansas City. And then if the score is 24-20 Kansas City, they're like, yeah, I knew it. You don't know nothing, right?
We all
you
got
can
that
predict, and you might be wrong more than you're right, but nobody knows. And these are the 2 best teams. Now, that being said, everyone wants a prediction. So Tom Brady is the greatest of all time. But I think there is a new greatest of our time.
I like that.
And that's number 15. And I think Patrick Mahomes makes a play in the 4th quarter. And I think Kansas City goes back-to-back. First back-to-back title since Brady and the Patriots did it in the middle of the 2000s. So, or late 2000s, yeah. But if the Buccaneers win, I'll be thrilled for Tom Brady. That's just more history, and thrilled for the Buccaneers franchise. But if I had to make a pick, I would say Chiefs in a close game with Mahomes making a play in the 4th quarter.
Does number 15 win the MVP award too?
Yeah, and I think he does. And, okay, let's do a little trivia. When was the last time there was a back-to-back Super Bowl MVP? And who was it?
Eli, no.
Eli won 2, but they weren't back-to-back.
Yeah. Tom Brady?
Brady never won back-to-back Super Bowl MVPs.
Ooh.
What year were you guys born?
2003.
You were minus 20, minus 30 something when this guy went back-to-back. I'll give you a hint. You see him on TV every Sunday.
Aikman.
Older than Aikman.
Terry Bradshaw?
Terry Bradshaw. Bradshaw was the last. There's only been 2 guys that have ever done it, won back-to-back Super Bowl MVPs. Terry Bradshaw did it in the late 70s, and Bart Starr, the old Hall of Fame Green Bay Packers quarterback, did it in the first few Super Bowls. He went back-to-back with the MVP. But yeah, if the Chiefs win it, Mahomes is going to be the MVP, I mean, unless Tyreek Hill runs those little end arounds, runs for 200 yards or something on rushing touchdowns, which usually those are shovel passes, and Mahomes gets credit for those. So give me the Chiefs in a close game and give me Mahomes as the MVP. I realize I'm not going out on a limb by saying that.
It's the popular pick. What can you say? It's Patrick Mahomes.
Yep.
It's hard to bet against.
Fellas, it's been great to be with you guys here.
Yeah, thank you so much for coming on. And before we let you go, can we get, since we're not going to hear for a while, can we get 7 hours of commercial-free football from you?
Just for you, fellas. Hey, gang, it's Scott Hanson from NFL RedZone. I'll be back in September with the Octobox and the Witching Hour all wrapped up in 7 hours of commercial-free football. But until then, make sure you check out the Jacob and Jacob podcast.
Thank you so much. We really appreciate it.